ultimately this is a story of supply, of people waiting finally for creditors to be repaid in some way, and then maybe they sell out. But Mt. Gox always seems to overhang the market. Would it be a long-term overhang?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, as you mentioned, we have roughly 142,000 Bitcoin, 143,000 Bitcoin cash, and roughly 69 billion yen that's due to creditors. That being said, we've seen historically in the past where there is custodial movement for different wallet preparations due for distribution, although both the company and the former CEO have said that that's going to likely be much closer to October 31st of 2024 this year. And so, you know, I think a lot of this is very much narrative sell pressure as opposed to actual distributions that were expected to happen.
Let's go to the narrative of ETH, therefore, because is it me or did everyone get upended by this? There is so much debate as to why suddenly the SEC seems to have, against its own self and own desires, be allowing there to be an ETH ETF coming sometime soon. We know that issuers have still got to get some sort of go-ahead. But Aya, what's your view on why this has happened?
Yeah, I mean, to your point around, you know, everyone being relatively surprised and underexposed, you could even see it in Polymarket, so a prediction marketplace, which earlier last week showed roughly 5% probability for the ETH ETF approval. And that was then immediately repriced to roughly 70%. And then, of course, the approval announcement. And so I think what has been more surprising for everyone to see in the space is that we're continuing to see crypto becoming a center topic for the 2024 presidential election. We obviously had the FIT21, the financial institutional technology bill, also get passed in Congress as well. And so that's been a full focus this year. And so we're going to continue to see that as we near the debate in June of this year as well.
Were you taken by surprise, Aya?
I certainly was. It's a good question. I would say, again, not only, you know, I myself am very bullish ETH and the entire ETH ecosystem, but we did see a number of our clients underexposed to ETH. And there was a large rotation into both ETH BTC, ETH Solana rotation. There's a lot of anticipation right now around Solana ETF being next on the list. And you know, you really saw also the ETH ecosystem tokens outperform. So you saw Lido, for example, that was up roughly 40%. And in options, a lot of activity. That said, implied volatility is still down, and we're seeing muted activity since the announcement. And a lot of that is because, Caroline, as you mentioned at the beginning, there's still questions around what the timeline is for the listing of the ETF itself. We've heard anything between the next week through end of summer. And so there's a lot of expectations right now over what that timeline will be, since as well the issuers themselves were caught off guard as too.
All right, I'm trying to get to the root of what the bigger picture is here. You know, we talk about Ethereum being the most commercially used blockchain. Kavita Gupta was on the show with me on Friday saying that, well, if Bitcoin is digital gold, ETH or Ether is digital oil. What's your kind of bigger picture on why this is important?
ETH is truly one of the foundational pieces of the entire ecosystem. Today, if you look at where most of the activity is centered, it is centered around Ethereum and its layer 2s. And without question, it's one of the most active chains in the space. And so even though you've seen alternative chains come about, you know, Ethereum is still very much the main chain where most of the activity in the space is happening and where a lot of the total value locked still stays to this date. Even if you look at some of the upcoming token launches, those projects are very ETH specific and dependent. And so, you know, I think the question here is that ETH is a core foundational token for the industry, and having that be accepted as an ETF is really the main narrative for us being able to bring crypto mainstream.